Have you considered making the switch to raw milk, but don't know where to begin? Maybe just the thought of it is overwhelming. That was me a couple of years ago. Welcome to Porch on the Prairie. I'm Megan, and I live on a homestead in rural Minnesota with my husband and 4 small children. We both work full-time outside the home, and my husband often travels for his work. Today, there's no school, so I'm home with the kiddos, and they're coming with me to run errands and pick up the milk. A couple of years ago, I started purchasing raw milk from a microdairy about 30 miles from where we live. It's only about 10 miles from where I own and operate my tattoo and permanent makeup business. I remember being so overwhelmed with trying to figure it all out. Now, I purchase 3 to 5 gallons each week, and nothing goes to waste. Once we are home, it's time to make one of my favorite treats, an espresso with honey, fresh milk, and ice. Last week, it was feeling like spring here in Minnesota, but now we're experiencing more snow and cold weather for a few days. Today, I'm teaching you a raw milk rhythm that I've established to make sure there's no waste. I'll teach you the simplest method and recipe for homemade yogurt, as well as homemade yogurt tubes. I'll also link all the kitchen gadgets I'm using in the description. It's not all required, but I'm telling you it all helps simplify things and save so much extra time in the kitchen. In addition, I have a bunch of simple raw milk recipes on my blog at porchontheprairie.com. I remember having no idea what skimming the cream even meant. Essentially, once the raw milk sits in the fridge for 24 hours or more, you will notice what is called a cream line, where the cream rises to the top and separates from the milk. Keep the milk in whole milk form, shake it in before pouring a glass to drink. Otherwise, the cream can be skimmed with a ladle and placed in a separate jar for other uses. It can be churned or blended for butter, used for baking, making homemade sour cream, or our favorite, homemade ice cream. I will share our favorite homemade ice cream recipe in another video. Today, I'm going to get a batch of homemade yogurt going in the Instant Pot. If I leave the cream in the jar and pour it all in, the cream will rise to the top, and it can be skimmed off and used as sour cream. This is the simplest way to make sour cream, and our favorite. A little note on this. If the finished yogurt, still in the Instant Pot insert, is kept in the fridge for a few hours, it'll all thicken just a little bit, and the sour cream is much easier to pull from the top of the yogurt. I don't need any sour cream from this batch, so I'm skimming the cream for other uses. There are multiple ways to make homemade yogurt, but the easiest way is this way. I keep a store-bought container of plain whole milk Greek yogurt in the fridge with live active cultures. This is my starter culture. I pour the milk into the Instant Pot. Add about a 1/4 cup of the yogurt with live active cultures per half gallon of raw milk. So today I'm using about a 1/2 cup of starter culture for the 1 gallon of milk. Give it a good stir, place the lid on, and press the yogurt button. Set the time for anywhere between 18 and 24 hours. A note on the Instant Pot seal. Remove the seal for yogurt making, or keep one that is just used for yogurt making. You don't need burrito bowl flavored yogurt because of an old seal. Always rinse the milk jars right away with warm water, not hot water. This will help prevent a milkstone buildup on the jars, which can be a breeding ground for bacteria. I already have a new batch of yogurt that I had poured from the Instant Pot into this handy strainer. So next, I'm going to deal with that. This strainer separates the whey from the yogurt to make a thicker Greek yogurt with minimal effort. It has been in the fridge for a couple of days, so I'm going to make a new batch of honey mango yogurt. Simply scoop the yogurt from the strainer into a large bowl. I like to add a little whey back into the yogurt so it isn't too terribly thick. I also like to use frozen fruit because it's cheaper and will add some liquid to the yogurt as it thaws in the fridge. The whey from the yogurt has many uses, but one of my favorites is homemade caramel. Sometimes I'll pour it back into the jar and store it in the fridge until I'm ready to use it. In my next video, I'll show you how to make the caramel. The yogurt goes back into the fridge for a while, and when I'm ready to finish it, I will add the honey and use an immersion blender to mix all of it together. Next, I have some honey mango yogurt in the fridge that I want to get into the freezer before it starts to sour. We are out of homemade frozen yogurt tubes, so that's what I'll be making. First, I'm going to add some fresh milk to thin out the consistency a bit. This will make it easier to get the yogurt into the tubes. Mix it all really well. I ordered the tubes on Amazon and they have a little seal on one end, but those are a pain to use. I also don't trust them to not leak all over. I prefer to cut those seals off and use my vacuum sealer instead. I've also found that a long neck funnel works best for filling the tubes. The gogurts are the best summer snack, especially while on the go. Popsicle molds work great too, but are definitely messier. I've also found that the frozen yogurt tubes work great for my kindergartner to bring with to school for snack. First, I cut the seal off the tubes and place the funnel into the open end of the tube, and then spoon in the yogurt. I have found that packing it through the funnel with a knife works well when the yogurt is still a little bit thick. Once I have enough yogurt in the tube, I seal the open end with my vacuum sealer. Don't vacuum seal, as that will suck air and yogurt out of the tube. Just seal. Also, be sure there's enough space at the top of the tube, about 1 to 2 inches, so that the yogurt doesn't squish all over inside the sealer. Repeat this process until all the yogurt is used up. Store them in the freezer, as this will keep the yogurt tasting fresh rather than letting it sour in the fridge. My husband is a beekeeper, so we're spoiled with an abundance of raw honey. These tubes are a great way to store fresh yogurt directly in the refrigerator for a quick snack for the kids or adults as well. I often get asked why I go through the effort of from-scratch food. People often assume it's super time-consuming. Really, it isn't. For all the dairy products I make, it really only takes a small chunk of time every few days to keep homemade yogurt and cheese in the fridge. I used to spend so much money on snacks for the kids. Now, I don't. Instead, I have a system for keeping healthy snacks on hand. For me, it's worth it, knowing my family gets nutritious food without all of the added junk you often find in the store-bought snacks. If you have pouch-loving kids, I'll share in another video how I make homemade squeeze pouches for my kids as well. I've found a super quick and simple method for making pouches that don't leak all over. To give you the full process of yogurt making itself, and to show you how it truly only takes a few minutes every couple of days, I'm going to show you how I add the honey and use the immersion blender for a delicious Greek yogurt. With the immersion blender, it does sort of give it a fluffy, whipped texture to begin with. In the coming days, as it sits in the fridge, you'll notice the whey separating from the yogurt and rising to the top of the jar. This can happen even with store-bought yogurt. Just be sure to give it a good stir after taking it from the fridge before dishing up the yogurt to eat. The honey I'm using here has crystallized. As I mentioned earlier, my husband is a beekeeper, so we're spoiled with pure, raw honey right from our farm. Honey never expires or gets old per se, but it can crystallize. This means the honey's natural sugars have turned to crystals, and high-quality honey tends to crystallize faster. What happened is some of our honey jars got too cold during the winter, so it went from the liquid form to a crystallized form. To help prevent honey from crystallizing, it should be stored around 65 to 75 degrees. Our main source of heat in the winter is our wood stove, so consistent cold temperatures is likely what turned our honey. However, to bring the honey back to liquid form, it is super simple. Just place the jar of honey in a bowl of warm water and let it sit for a few days. Just be sure it's not hot or boiling water, or you'll damage the honey's flavor and nutrients. All that being said, I've found that the crystallized honey works just as well in my homemade yogurt, so that's what I'm using here. Anyways, that's all for this week. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe for more raw milk recipes, simple from-scratch kids snacks, and easy homestead rhythms. See you next week.